Are you ready? Are you sitting down? Because the first spec officially confirmed by the bluepost, unless I've missed one, I don't think I did, that is finished for Dragonflight is Arms Warrior. And it's looking to be so good, and I cannot believe we did the tier list before I got to check all these updates, because it is a fucking S tier. And once again, you might think that I'm overreacting because I'm always excited. Listen. Fuck off, watch the video, and make your own damn mind, because Jesus, dude, Arms is... Fuck, man, am I gonna main Arms? This is the first time I'm actually considering this. This is amazing, and we will. I'm so excited, man. We will go into the details of Arms, but first also make sure that if you like the content that we do and you want to help us grow and improve and be able to actually do these types of videos on a daily basis, consider becoming a patron and supporting us. Down in the description, you'll find the link to our Patreon page. You will find a different level of tiers depending on exactly what you want and, you know, how generous you feel or what your capabilities are. And it doesn't really matter. Anything is gratefully appreciated. We are humbly grateful for all the supports that we're getting from the Patreon. It is actually a big deal for us. It helps us make these videos and be able to do this for a living. And, you know, to pay for Marcelian's boosts to get that goddamn dagger. Hey, the fuck, man? You don't do that anymore. He won't listen ever. But you will have to listen to this video because we will be talking about the latest and possibly final iteration of Arms. Granted, some tuning will probably still happen in Dragonflight and what that looks like. They did say in the bluepost that they're happy with how Arms is looking, and I agree, it's looking pretty good, and they're just working on making the numbers more viable, and I hope that, you know, they keep up this good work and make everything essentially good and viable and not force us into only one build for the entire expansion, which I don't like. But let's actually talk. So if you've missed our general talent talk, I did go into all the talent changes in the general tree in a lot more detail in the Fury video, so I'm not gonna touch too much on these except for a couple ones that are really good for Arms, and I'll talk about them throughout the video. And if you do want a more in-depth approach to the general talent tree after you watch this video, consider watching the Fury one as well. First of all, if you look at the general talent tree, you will notice that Berserker stance is gone and you'll have a battle stance, and vice versa is true for Fury. This is something maybe one of the few things that I'm not particularly happy about, because they gave us stances and they took them away once again. People were excited about it. However, it did look like as an Arms player, you would want to be in battle stance more than anything outside of Berserker stance. However, I did like the option to have both, since they, outside of the damage that they provided, they also offered some utility and some tankiness for specific type of crowd controls and CCs and stuff like that, and having the option to choose between the two would be particularly good. For all I care, they can put a bigger cooldown on the stance changes, put it like, I don't know, 10 seconds maybe, and put Berserker stance in so that we don't swap, because they said that they don't want stance swapping very often like stance dancing that we had a long time ago. They just want stances to be a particular passive aura that you have that augments your playstyle to the degree that you want it to be augmented, and I agree with that. I don't know if I would like stance dancing. There's so many things, more cooler things that you can do as an Arms Warrior outside of just pressing battle stance and Berserker stance. I digress. That is maybe not here and there. I won't cry over it, but it was kind of cool to have it. It was an iconic Warrior thing. It was not a Fury thing. It was just a Warrior thing. Berserker stance, that is. We do have two really cool changes, two really cool stuff. Is Retching Impact, where it's a choice node upgrade to Heroic Leap on the left hand side, and this will make when you Heroic Leap to a target, you pull everybody in. And that's cool because, I mean, that's good utility. It's gonna be really good in Mythic Plus. It's on a 10-yard range radius. So it's not as big as Sigil of Chains, to my knowledge, and definitely not as big as the Gorfian Grasp from Blood Decay, which is, I guess, good because you don't really want the grip mechanic to lose its identity and give value to the classes that had it, and, you know, make it available for everybody. But this is good enough. If the pack is kind of tight, you can make it tighter. Oof. And obviously you'll stop casts and channels and stuff like that with it. It's particularly good. And the other one that I wanted to mention is Sidearm, which is all the way on the right-hand side, which you'll probably get. This was a Fury talent that now makes your auto attacks have a 15% chance to hurl weapons at your target and 3 other enemies in front of you, dealing an additional 20% attack power. Now, I don't know, this is probably not as good for arms as it is for Fury because you have slower auto attacks. You have fewer auto attacks than Fury has because Fury is dual wielding, clearly. However, this is a cool thing and you might still go for it, especially if you want to talent down into more damage. I might as well take Sidearm, which is more DPS than stuff like Stormbolt, for instance. And with that, let's actually talk about the Spec Tree. And a lot of things have shifted positions, which makes more sense, which makes it actually cooler to build into things. And we've lost a bunch of stuff that were kind of weird, like rank 2 of whatever spell and more damage and whatever. We just have like cool fucking shit, man. Jesus Christ. So first of all, Colossus Smash is now central. It's right smack dab in the middle, whereas before it was all the way to the right hand side, which was weird because you would always talent into Colossus Smash. You would never not talent into Colossus Smash. It's core to arms. It's what makes arms basically now anyway. And of course it keeps going down into a bunch of cooler nodes. Anger management you're definitely gonna take. I don't see why not. You don't really sacrifice anything for it, and you'll have a couple of choice nodes that we've talked before, but these talents were kind of spread out throughout the talent tree. Now they're condensed here. So first of all, you have Warbreaker, which, you know, it's been what we've been using for 3 expansions now, versus Blunt Instruments as a choice. Blunt Instruments makes Colossus Smash damage increased by 30% and its effect increased by 3 seconds, which is fucking amazing for raids, especially for those bosses. Colossus Smash actually fucking slaps right now with the current tuning. I don't know how they're gonna change this going forward, but right now it slaps. Right now it's the biggest single target hitting ability if you talent into Blunt Instruments, which, I mean, it's good. It's fucking Colossus Smash, and I think the last time Colossus Smash did significant and reliable damage was Legion, I believe, where it went through a bunch of changes where they didn't want people to feel very reliant on Colossus Smashes or make the window bigger, smaller, shorter, whatever. But now it feels like a legit, I'm smashing my target and I'm breaking their armor, right? It should hit hard, right? And on the left-hand side, we have Test of Might and In for the Kill. In for the Kill has kind of been buffed also, where you get a little bit more haste after you Colossus Smash. And Test of Might is basically, I think this was buffed too. Now, when Colossus Smash expires, your strength is increased by 5% for every 30 rage you spend, whereas before I think it was 3% for every 10 rage. So now it scales slightly different, I suppose, which, hey, that's good, bigger chunks of buff all around. I don't mind it. It's fine. It's probably going to be taken. I know I'm gonna love playing with it, and that's going to be cool. And it will keep going down since we're in the middle as well. We have Valor and Victory, which is it's a cool multi-point node, increases the versatility, but also reduces the cooldown of Die by the Sword by 15 seconds, and then that's 30. But I think on beta right now it says 33 seconds. I don't know if it's a tooltip error or if it was a hotfix by the time I'm recording this video, but that is what it is. It's basically reducing the cooldown of Die by the Sword by half a minute, which is 2 minutes default, and it's also only available to arms now, which as before it was in the general talent tree, making protection stupid. And of course Fury as well, because Fury would have gotten like way more defensives. With that out of the way, Blade Storm. Actually, Blade Storm has some proper depth and identity to it, with 2 potential upgrades that are capstones, and they're both on choice nodes. So first of all, you have on the left hand side Unhinged versus Dance of Death. Unhinged is the legendary that we have right now, where when you Blade Storm, you just slap 2 mortal strikes at targets at random enemies. A total of 2, not 2 for each enemy, so nothing like that. That would probably be stupid. It's still really good, especially if you talent into a lot of the mortal strike effects and buffs. That's really cool. This has been, if I recall, the PvP legendary in Season 1 in Shadowlands. Has been really good in PvP. I can definitely see it being good in AoE as well in PvE. Dance of Death is the other option, where if your Blaze Storm kills an enemy, your next Blaze Storm lasts 3 seconds longer. So essentially these feel like one is single target, one is AoE, obviously Unhinged single target and Dance of Death AoE. Since when you Blaze Storm in a pack, if you actually kill a target, you get a 3-minute buff on you called Dance of Death. Then your next Blaze Storm lasts 3 seconds longer. And obviously if your next Blaze Storm kills a target, you will keep rolling this buff, and it really promotes, you know, back-to-back constant like big AoE pulls, does a lot of damage, and of course if you're talented into Test of Might, you can queue these up together. If you have on the right hand side rather, the other choice node, which is Merciless Bone Grinder, a big player right now in Shadowlands for Arms and Fury as well. When Blaze Storm ends, Whirlwind and Cleave deal 50% increased damage for 9 seconds. Wow, that's really fucking cool. And obviously this is what most of the AoE happens right now for Arms in Shadowlands. It depends exactly how you build it in Dragonflight, because Whirlwind has its own build, and we will talk about it in a second. And the other option is Hurricane, which was the old Gathering Storm. Blade Storming every 1 second, you gain 5% movement speed and 5% strength stacking. And this lasts for 6 seconds, the buff, and you will Blade Storm for about, what is it, 8 seconds? 10 seconds? I don't know. It depends how long Blaze Storm lasts, because it is a hasted effect. So the more haste you have, the faster you will end up finishing your Blaze Storm. And obviously, if you take the Dance of Death, Dance of Death can probably scale really highly with Hurricane. I couldn't really test it because shit just dies way too quick. So I don't get like a lot of uptime and a lot of details about these things. And some of them might not even work properly if they're not fixed, but they should probably work, meaning that this will give you a much bigger buff of Hurricane, which is fucking amazing. I love this goddamn synergy. And another type of playstyle that I want to talk about is Sweeping Strikes, which is a choice right now on the right hand side. And what Sweeping Strike does, obviously it's the same thing that it does right now. You can hit an additional target with your single target abilities for 75% of the normal damage for 15 seconds every 30 seconds. So half the time you're cleaving to a second target, which is again one of the reasons why Arms is a cleave powerhouse, similar to Destruction Warlock. Now with the Sweeping Strikes, you have a choice node, which will unlock further discussions that we need to go into. Storm of Swords that we had before, Whirlwind costs 30 more rage and has a 14-second cooldown, but now deals 200% more damage. Also, the cooldown is hasted, which right now in my live Arms warrior geared a little bit from the dungeons at level 63, it's 11 seconds, and that's quite a bit. It depends on how the haste will scale at max level, if you start with this, or it gets worse, because obviously, you know, the soft cap happens at around, you know, halfway through your leveling process towards the new max level of any expansion. So we'll see how that ends up, but it essentially makes Whirlwind faster and generate more damage, and also cost more rage. Right now you can get Whirlwind to cost 65 rage, and we will get into that in a second because it is nuts. And of course, Collateral Damage, which has been played kind of here and there throughout Shadowlands, but not a lot, not consistently. So what Collateral Damage does is when Sweeping Strike ends, your next Whirlwind deals 25% increased damage for each ability used during Sweeping Strikes. That damage is a second target. Now I can definitely see this if you don't take Storm of Swords. Obviously Whirlwind will not have a cooldown, so you can just spam it like you do now in Shadowlands. And if you talent into Merciless Bone Grinder, it might be a better way of dealing AoE, because if you take Storm of Swords and Bone Grinder, you'll only get like one Whirlwind in that buffed up window, but you can do other stuff with that, and basically will enable more playstyles, and I'll talk about them in a second. First of all, I want to touch about, since we're on this side of the talent tree, Skull Banner is here at the choice node below Sweeping Strikes and is on a choice node with improved Mortal Strike, which is a weird choice node. I don't know if this is gonna maintain, because first of all, the improved Mortal Strike just increases Mortal Strike damage by 5%. That is very bland considering everything else that's in the talent tree. This may be one of the only, or maybe the most bland and boring talent, and it's on a choice node with Skull Banner. That's a 3-minute cooldown, and when you place it down, all of your party members within 20 yards will do 20% more crit damage. Are you fucking kidding me? That's nowhere near the same. Obviously, Mortal Strike of passive 5% more damage is consistent damage, while Skull Banner is burst, but it also bursts for your party. And if you have somebody that can really take advantage of that crit damage, let's say like a Fire Mage during combustion, holy fucking shit, dude. So I am all for Skull Banner. I would like it to be a competitive choice node. I have a hard time seeing how it would be competitive choice nodes with improved Mortal Strike. So maybe this will change or tuned in the coming weeks for tuning, and maybe will increase Mortal Strike damage by what, something like 10-20%, I don't know, because Even with this, Whirlwind still deals more damage than Mortal Strike if you take all of the big Whirlwind DPSs that puts it on a cooldown as well. On the other side of the talent tree, something that I'm a little bit confused about is Skull Splitter, which is Skull Splitter, the one that you know, and it also has an upgrade, Fracture. When Skull Splitter damages an enemy, it causes your Deep Wounds, Rend, and Thunderous Roar to expire instantly. Now, I am not 100% sure why you would ever want that, because the expiry doesn't mean that they just do the remaining damage easily, which I thought is what this was supposed to be, and this would make Skull Splitter really cool, considering how many bleeds you have. You have Deep Wounds, you have Rend, and obviously Thunderous Roar bleed from the Thunderous Roar talent in the general talent tree. But if this is not how it's going to work, then maybe this is supposed to be a PvP thing. Maybe use Skull Splitter to take off your bleeds from the target so you can CC them, fear them or something, so you don't break the CC with the bleeds. Maybe that's the purpose of this, so maybe it's a pure PvP talent. If that's the case, then okay, whatever, but why isn't it in the PvP talents? Why is it in the general talent tree? Because this has hardly any applications in PvE, so that's just, I mean, weird. But I guess, you know, I'm a PvP player, I don't mind having this in. It's a choice, you don't have to take it, but if you do take Skull Splitter and you want to keep going down, you will have to take other talents next to it to keep going down if you don't want to take Fracture, which is kind of a waste of a point, and the other ones might be heavy, more heavy in investment. And now that I talked about this, I want to go back to the Whirlwind playstyle, which is something that I've been testing, and that is fucking amazing. So you can actually have a Whirlwind that can slap more than a Mortal Strike initial damage, as a big number on your screen, right? Right now with the current tuning, obviously Mortal Strike is still more valuable because it applies deep wounds. But Whirlwind, without being buffed, mind you, by stuff like Bone Grinder, slaps harder. And it slaps harder because, first of all, Fervor of Battle, that makes Whirlwind also slam, so within one global you do a lot of damage. That is augmented by Crushing Force from the General Talent tree, which makes Slam deal an additional 30% damage and also have its critical strike chance increased. It's actually 60% with the 2 points put in, and 15% more crit chance, which is good. And also Barbaric Training, Slam and Whirlwind deal 40% more damage, but now cost for 5 more rage, which is contributing to making Whirlwind go all the way up to like 65 rage, unless this changes in the future. And of course with Storm of Swords that I've mentioned before, which is fucking nuts. And especially if you're playing a very heavy rage generating playstyle, popping a Whirlwind and emptying that rage bar is really good, because right now I'm still generating a lot of rage sometimes, and there are talents that reduce the rage cost of Mortal Strike, which doesn't really help when I want to consume it, and I don't have enough haste to put in enough globals to consume that rage before Mortal Strike becomes available again. So right now, the way Arms plays, which is actually really fun, you get way more Mortal Strike resets then, and Mortal Strike doesn't consume as much rage, then you actually have the ability to spend that rage on stuff like Slam or Whirlwind. So that remains to be tuned out and see exactly how we can play with that type of playstyle. But I love Whirlwind, and something that I love more than Whirlwind, and it's a nostalgic ability for me, it's Cleave. It's one of the abilities that made me enjoy Warrior back in Classic when I leveled it up. I thought that once I got Cleave, I felt like I can actually quest. If you remember, back in Classic, it was really hard to do quests and fight a lot of mobs at one time, but Cleave basically enabled that, and Cleave has been put back into Arms for a while, but again, it was kind of niche, right? And it's still kind of niche, but now you don't really have to sacrifice much for it, and it can become an amazing part of your rotation right now with a lot of talents that will make Cleave way more relevant for you as an Arms player. First of all, you have Exhilarating Blows, which I think it's the Mortal Combo type legendary that we have right now. Mortal Strike and Cleave have a 15% chance to instantly reset their cooldown. And Cleave comes with a base cooldown, obviously, that you can also reduce, but with all the resetting cooldowns options, you don't want to probably ever take that anyway. You have Battle Lord. Your Overpower has a 25% chance to reset the cooldown of Mortal Strike and Cleave and reduce the rage cost. Remember, I mentioned that by 15, which, I mean, Cleave costs 20 rage baseline. So if it costs 5 rage, you're not consuming that rage anytime soon. Not to mention Mortal Strike costs 30 rage baseline, so having it cost 15 rage once again, it's good rage management But you will be forced into taking talents and abilities that will consume a lot of rage, which maybe is good. Maybe that's a fun playstyle that you can engage in. And from Battle Lord, you get the Fatality Capstone on the left-hand side, which has also been buffed. Your Mortal Strikes and Cleave against enemies above 30% health have a high chance to apply Fatal Mark. When an enemy falls below 30% health, your next execute inflicts an additional 200% attack power physical damage per stack. Now this is a very interesting mechanic, a very cool mechanic, which is reminiscent of, for me at least, the Latent Poison playstyle of Survival, where you apply debuff and stack debuffs on, in AoE, if we're talking about AoE, because we're talking about Cleave here, in high mythic fortified dungeons, let's say, each having its own stack. Once they drop below 30%, you'll probably have to individually execute. This might be a little bit rage intensive if you're fighting, let's say, like a let's say 5 target pack, right? Because Cleave does less damage on more than 5 targets. And you have 5 targets with Fatality on them, you'll have to do 5 executes while they're under 30% health. And if you want to take max advantage out of Fatality, you might not be able to execute every one of them before they end up dying. However, depends on how high the keys go. So this could be something that's really good in very, very, very high keys, with mobs having a lot of HP and giving you a lot of Fatality stacks. And that's not all. Sharpened Blades on the right hand side, your Mortal Strike, Cleave, and Executing critical strike damage is increased by 10%, and your Execute has a 5% increased critical strike chance. But then again, obviously buffs all of them, but you constantly get all of the buffs for your core abilities. Mortal Strike, Execute also include Cleave in, which is amazing for me because I love Cleave. Exploiter also right there next to it. Execute causes the target to take 25% more damage from your next Mortal Strike or Cleave. Now, with that, and of course I mentioned Bone Grinder that increases the damage of Cleave after you're finishing Blaze Storming. Depends exactly on how it tunes out. If you want to spend those on Whirlwinds or you want to spend them on Cleaves, you can spend them on 1 Cleave and apply deep wounds. You can spend them on 1 Whirlwind with the big fat Whirlwind and then just spam Cleaves with the resets. That Cleave overpower, because overpower is going to reset the cooldown of Cleave. That can be really cool. It comes down very importantly to the tuning of Cleave, because first of all, it competes with Mortal Strike, and right now it does 70% of attack power to 5 targets and reduce damage past that, while Mortal Strike does 174% attack power, and obviously it can cleave with sweeping strikes. So Cleave will essentially deal more damage than Mortal Strike on 3 or more targets, and if you have sweeping strikes, it's probably going to be, I don't know, 4 or 5 more targets than Mortal Strike. And it feels slightly awkward. I guess it's fine, because if you buff it too much, then it can be used on 2 targets, and then it kind of invalidates sweeping strikes, so maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe it's in a sweet spot right now, and with all the buffers, we'll see exactly how that will affect the overall tuning. But it's looking good. It's looking like you have different playstyles and different... I didn't even talk about stuff like Rend and Blood and Thunder, which I've talked about last time. That hasn't really changed. Then these can be augmented by Blood Surge, where your periodic bleeds effects have a chance to grant you 5 rage. It is amazing. There's so many synergy options here, so many different types of playstyles and buffs. Blaze Storm, Cleave, Whirlwind, Rend, Mortal Strike, Overpower. Every ability has a bunch of talents that make it amazing. Execute as well. This is what I want to see from a talent tree. I want to have, this is my core spec. I have all of these tools, and each tool can be augmented by a bunch of stuff that can make it cooler in a way, and you can combine these into some awesome fucking playstyles that you wouldn't be able to play otherwise. Definitely not with the current talents that we have in Shadowlands. Is this enough to make you go Lothar or For the Alliance or whatever you want as a warrior to smash things? Man, I'm so fucking excited. I just don't want to play Shadowlands. I just want to play Arms Warrior right now. It is fucking amazing. Hope you enjoyed the video. Once again, if you want to support us, support every content that we do, the Patreon link is down below. We would be super grateful if you checked it out. You don't have to, but you can check it out and see if there's something for you. We have a bunch of rewards ready, from wallpapers to access to monthly Patreon talks and stuff like that. Thank you very much for watching the video. See you next time. Love y'all. Peace.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.